Well, this afternoon I'd like to talk to you about an old friend of mine by the name of George Dency. George was a senior in magic when I first came into the art. Well, not really first came into the art. I began when I was 8 years old. I didn't really meet George until I was in my early 20s. And I met George when I became a member of the Society of American Magicians Assembly 6. That's the Keller-Thurston Assembly. Legend has it that the original stage that Keller and Thurston stood on was part of the Assembly 6 meetings, and that was when they met at Phil Thomas's place at the Yogi Magic Bar. After Phil Thomas retired, no one quite knows what happened to that stage. At least I don't know what happened to the stage. But at any rate, George was a senior member of the club at that time, and when you became a new member, you had to do 15 minutes of magic. I didn't know a whole lot when I first became a member, but I did 15 minutes. And one of the things that I did was something that every magician does at some point, and that is the professor's nightmare. And I'm going to show that to you in a minute. But the reason I'm showing it to you is because George taught me a handling for it that for me completely changed the trick. Now, I remember the first time I saw the trick. I went down to the magic shop. You know, that's where I learned a lot of stuff. I went down to the magic shop, and I was maybe 8 years old, maybe 9, and the dealer showed it to me, and I was totally blown away. And I think that's today, years later, when you've been in magic for years and years and years, you look back on some of these things and think, they can't fool anybody. It's not really magic, but it is. It is. The classics are classics for a reason. Don't give up on them. So anyway, I did my 15 minutes of magic, and George came over to me after the show and said, you know, let me show you something. And so he taught me a way of doing it that is not in the books. I've never seen anybody do it this way after George, but it completely changed the way I did the trick. So anyway, let me show it to you now. The professor's nightmare uses 3 ropes. In this particular case, I'm going to talk about potential and about advantage. I think everybody, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people look at other people and compare themselves with other people. That's not really a smart practice. What you really need to do is compare yourself with yourself. What do you want to achieve? Where do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? Mold yourself based on your own self-assessment, not based on what somebody else is doing. But nevertheless, we look at some other people and say, wow, that person has every advantage in the world. They're rich, they're good-looking, whatever it might be, they have every advantage in the world. And then there's some people that seem to have nothing. And we look at them and say, thank God, you know, at least I have what I do have. And like most of us, we're somewhere in between. We don't have everything we wish we had, but we do have some advantage and some assets. Well, it's not really where we start that matters. It's not really the advantage we have that matters. It's not how much money or where we're from or what college we graduated from. It really comes down to how hard are we willing to work for the goals that we've set. Are we willing to focus? Are we willing to stay focused? And if we do that, it doesn't really matter. See, the person that has everything, you really can't tell that person apart from the person that has absolutely nothing or the person that has somewhere in between. We all start more or less at the same place, and it is grit, it is determination that separates the one that has everything from the one who has very little and the one who has somewhere in between. Anyway, that was George Dency's handling of the professor's nightmare. Now let me tell you a little bit more about George. Not only was he a great magician, and he was, he knew the ins and outs of everything, but he was a very good friend of mine, and for years and years and years he taught me, he mentored me. Well, in a few years' time, I became the president of the Society of American Magicians Assembly 6. And if you ever become a part of these organizations, you will find that they utilize your skills rather quickly. So I became the president, and it was Christmas. It was this time of the year, and everything was decorated for Christmas. And I don't know if it was Christmas Day or if it was Christmas Eve or the day after Christmas. I'm not sure when that was exactly, but I got a phone call. And it was the national office of the Society of American Magicians. And they began to ask me questions about George. Well, George had a national reputation. I didn't know it at the time, but he did. So I was answering the questions, and I said, "What, are you doing a feature on George?" Because the Society of American Magicians publishes a monthly magazine called MUM, Magic, Unity, Might, MUM for short. I always thought that was a little crazy, but that's the name of the magazine. So I figured they were doing a special feature on George, and he said, "Haven't you heard?" And I said, "Heard what?" He said, "Well, George passed away and we're doing an obituary." Ugh. I was devastated. I had no idea. But I finished the interview. They ended up doing a wonderful article on George. And now, today, 2018, the local linking ring, the local ring assembly, which is the local affiliate of the International Brotherhood of Magicians, is named after George Dency. It's called the George Dency Ring. If you've never heard of George Dency, and if you're in your 20s now, you probably didn't, because he passed away at least 20 years ago, probably 25 years ago. Hopefully this was a little bit of an introduction to George. I'm going to do that periodically on this vlog. I'm going to tell you about some people that impacted my life. I'm going to try to introduce you to some of the things that they did. Thank you for watching.